Thank you. Good evening, one and all. Welcome to this second day of our consecutive attempt to know more about research. So, what we have covered so far, we have been looking at the birth of a research idea, the research problem, and how you identify the problem and meaningfully associate the same with the research ecosystem or the environment. Then we try to look at reviewing the existing literature, the different formats, and yesterday we were looking at the different types of design which can be used in research, more specifically in terms of social science research. Now, today we are continuing our journey basically in terms of the sample, and based on the sample, how do you administer the right tools for collection, be it primary data or secondary data? In social science, what are the approaches that we can use? What are the research methods that we can use in terms of the design that we have formulated? Now, yesterday we were trying to understand that which methods you use, what sample you're going to use, and which data collection tool you would use is typically based on the design that you have formulated. So if you're going to use a particular tool, the design must be in tune with that. And the design is based again on the research questions. So there is a consequential link between the problem, out of which springs out the questions. And from the questions, we have the objectives. You have done your literature. Based on the literature, we have a hypothesis. And then it is very clear what is that you want to find out. And once that is clear, you have to design the appropriate tool based on the design. So that's what we are going to look into. Now let us try and understand this parameter in terms of the process which we now just saw. We already saw the research problem, then the research questions and objectives, and then how literature is reviewed. Why are we reviewing literature? Fundamentally, to know what is existing in that particular domain, and more primarily, to see whether we can develop a hypothesis. So at this stage, it becomes imperative to understand what exactly is a hypothesis. We would normally say that a hypothesis is a tentative question, it's an assumption. But beyond that, let us try and understand hypothesis from the genesis of the term. Hypothesis is a combination of two words, hypo and thesis. And what is thesis? And what is hypo? Hypo is actually the opposite of hyper. And hyper means above, more than. When you say somebody is an hyperactive child, or when you say that he is suffering from hypertension, it means that you have a level of tension or a level of activity which is beyond or above the normal. That is hyper. So when I say opposite of that, it means below or less than. So the word hypo signifies below or less than. And what is thesis? Scientifically established, empirically tested facts. So hypothesis
Recording stopped.
is something where we have a tentative kind of feel that this is happening because of something which is said in a prior study or because of something which is said in an established theory. So it is yet to be established, but we tentatively get a feel that this is because of this, as said in this theory. That is hypothesis.
Recording in progress.
That is why we are saying it is tentative and it is an assumption. Now we need to understand, when I was referring to the earlier case of medicine, I was trying to say that if you have a headache, then you go to a doctor. The doctor is doing research on that patient. It's in fact a case study. But the doctor is asking certain questions, which is akin or similar to that of a questionnaire or an interview schedule that you have. Now he's trying to get data, but he's trying to find out, or he's trying to get data relating to this case of headache in terms of the theories which are existing. That means he has in his mind that if your headache is because of migraine, you will show these indications. And I'm trying to find out whether it is that because I have this hypothesis in my mind. You're showing these indications which is related to this particular disease or ailment, but I'm not sure. It might require further investigation. Or if you're giving certain other questions and answers are coming that which is indicative of some other disease, you're trying to relate it to that. So knowing the literature well, knowing the existing theories well, will lead us to a hypothesis that this event, this situation, this problem is actually associated with this. That is what we mean by hypothesis. Now, that hypothesis is asking for further probing. And it is based again on this hypothesis and your research questions that we move into what is known as the research design and the tools for collection, the tools that you use for collection over there. Now, we have already seen a design and we saw what is experimental research, non-experimental research, semi-experimental research. We looked into the different forms of designs that you have, and exploratory, descriptive, all the different designs and the conditions under which we actually use them. And we said it should be tested for validity, reliability, replicability, and so on. So today we are trying to look at what is the sample that you're selecting and how do you decide what should be the sample size and what are the tools that you design for collection. Because once you know the problem, now we have to formulate the most appropriate tool. Otherwise, the conclusions will go wrong. And if the conclusions go wrong, reliability is lost. Or you might not be able to measure the effect of one variable on the other because the sample that you have taken or the method that you have adopted is wrong. So now we are trying to look at how do you actually look at the sample and how do you actually select an appropriate sample size. So what are the tools for collection? We have the tools which are separate for primary data. You have your interviews, open-ended. I'm coming to this again, so I'm just giving an overview here. So you have interviews which could be open-ended or close-ended, and you have structured schedules. You have questionnaires which could be structured or unstructured. You can also, although they're less used, you have also in social science observations, experiments, participation, experiencing. All these could be used in collection of data. Now, this data is collected from a sample. And before coming into the methods or the tools, we need to know a bit about the sample. So when you try to understand sample, these terms are something which we should get clarified. What is a population? What is a sample frame? And what is the sample? Now, when you say population, I know it is quite simple. Normally, it's called the universe. Sum of all units from which the sample can be drawn. The sum total of all units. Suppose I want to collect a sample of students in a college, then the total number of students in that college will represent the universe. Suppose I want to select customers for a particular product, the total number of customers for that product will represent the population. Now, we are not saying individuals because units can also be of objects. So, sum total of all units from which the sample can be selected. But we need to also understand that there is at times something called a sample frame. Now, this is the list of units from which the sample is actually selected. The other one was the list from which it can be drawn. Now, you might have a criteria within the list from which the sample can be drawn, restricting it to certain numbers. Say, for example, among the students in the college, if I am saying that I would like to select only students who have been in that college for 1 year. Now, if there are 9,000 students in the college, out of them, 1,000 students have a college life of less than 1 year, then they are excluded. So I say my population is 9,000, all students in the college, but I'm selecting only those students who have been, because I want to know about the college, I'm selecting those students who have been in that college for at least 1 year. And there are only 8,000 such students. I hope you're following what I'm saying. So when the population is 9,000, I would like to select only those who have completed 1 year of life in that college, and there are only 8,000 such students. So when the population is 9,000, the sample frame is 8,000. But suppose I'm saying that I'm selecting all students in the college, and there is no other criteria for limiting it or for confining it, then in that case, the population and the sample frame will be the same. Again, I want to select customers, but I want to select only those customers who have made a purchase of at least uh, two purchases in a year or three, something like that. So if I'm saying all customers, the number was 25,000, which is the population. But I'm saying I will do my study among those customers who have purchased the product for at least uh, two times or three times. And out of 25, this would be perhaps 15,000 or 18,000. So that is my sample frame. But when I'm saying customers who have purchased a particular product and I've got no limitation, then in that case, the sample frame and the population will be the same. Now, we also very carefully need to understand what is a representative sample. A representative sample is that which represents the population. Now, this is a key issue which we encounter in research because when you want to take a sample, the sample must have the characteristics of the population. Because whatever you said in the sample, you are saying it represents the population. So it should be representative. That is why in many of my previous presentations, I have talked about a classical, again, medical clinical test, which perhaps all of us have encountered at some point in our life. And that is a blood test. The blood test, a simple blood test, which we call a sample. It's an excellent example of a representative sample. The human body would have approximately somewhere around 5 liters of blood. But when you do a blood test, a few drops is extracted and it is given for test. The sample size is very small. We don't take 1 liter of blood or one bottle of blood. The sample size is very small and it is considered to be adequate. Why? Because it is representative. Now, what do you mean by it being representative? What are the variations that you have in the blood? It might vary in terms of HBC, it might vary in terms of platelet count, it might vary in terms of different other counts which are there. Those counts which you want will be exactly the same in these two drops as it is in the full human body blood. So that is why it's called a representative sample. But when you have a sample which is not representative, which is something like sitting on either sides of a normal distribution. I would like to study satisfaction among employees. And I'm selecting a sample which is terribly affected by a wage cut. And all of them are giving their responses against the company. Now, I consider this to be representative, but this is only one group which was affected. It is skewed towards that. So it's not representative. But I'm doing this, I'm saying that this is a sample of employees in a particular company. But the sample that I have selected is a person who is terribly affected by a wage cut. And obviously, his response might not be representative. So I must make it representative. That means it must have the characteristics of the population. Or, in very simple terms, it must represent a cross section of the population. Now, let us understand what is sampling bias. This arises when the units have no chance of being selected, though they represent the population. Now, suppose I'm taking a population in which we have different categories or different uh, categories of representation. But suppose I'm saying that some group in this will never get selected. I'm having a sampling design where I'm saying that, suppose I'm saying that those who reside beyond 50 kilometers will, I want it on the basis of region. And I'm saying that those who do not reside within 50 kilometers of my domicile are not included in the sample. So there is a sampling bias there. Or I'm saying that people who are very old will not be part of the sample. Or people who have got very radical thoughts, I'm not going to take them in the sample. So I'm not giving a chance of every person, though representative, to be a part of the sample. So in that case, we are saying we have sampling bias. So this sampling bias is something which normally does come when we are either because of our error in the selection or because of some other reasons. We are not rightly looking at giving every chance of all representative sample to be part of the population. Now let us understand what is sampling error. Error in findings of the research because there's a difference in the sample and the population which is selected. So your findings are going wrong because there is a difference in the sample and the population. I take, so they say, for example, in the blood test that I'm doing, I'm taking some blood, and this blood is showing some parameters, maybe of platelet or HB count or something like that, which is different from the population. That means you say your HB count is this many thousands from the sample, but that is not the case in the population. Now you're saying there's a sampling error because you're going to give the findings of this person saying that your platelet count is only so much. Blood is not a right example because I said blood is an excellent example of sample. If you have 10,000 platelets in the sample, you'll have the same in the population. But your findings in the research is such that it is different in the sample and different in the population. That's why I said I'm finding something in the sample, but I'm saying that this represents the population, but it is not there in the population. So your findings are going wrong. There is an error in your finding because you selected a sample which is giving a result which is different from the population. If you study the entire population, the result will be different. When you're doing a sample survey, what you do for the sample and when you do it for a larger case, it should be more or less the same because you're selecting only those people who can actually represent and reflect the population. But when that does not happen, there is sampling error. Now, non-sampling error. Here also the findings of the research is not the same as that of the population. But the difference in the sample and the population is actually based on the long sampling approach. Earlier, the difference was because the sample is not representative. Then you call it sampling error. Here also there's a difference. There's a difference in the sample and the finding that you get from the sample is not that what you will get from the population. But here the error is actually happening because of your sampling approach. Now, what is a sampling approach? You don't have the right size or the no responses. Say, for instance, I'm taking I took a right methodology for getting a 50 people, 50 employees from a firm. And I find that they are representing all the variables in the firm. They constitute employees in different age. They constitute employees in different income group. They constitute employees in different divisions. They constitute employees in different gender. So in the population, I'm seeing variation in terms of gender, in terms of the division in which they work, in terms of the income that they get by salary, and in terms of age. So these are the 4 cases in which the population will vary. And from all these 4 groups, I have a sample of maybe 50 employees each. So I have a sample of 200 employees. So that way, I don't have a sampling error because everything that is there in the population is now represented in the sample. But there is what is known as the sampling approach goes wrong. One approach going wrong is no response. Out of the 200 people that I took, there are 30 people in one age group or maybe in one income group who did not respond at all. And in spite of not getting that response, I'm saying that this is a result of 200 employees. If it was the result of 200 employees, it would have represented the population. My approach was I approached a respondent. He did not give me a response. So what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to remove that person because his response is not there and supplement it with another sample. But I did not do that. So this is what I'm saying. The sampling approach that you're following. Or you took a size which is small, which is not representing. In this case, there is a difference in the sample and the population because of size or because of the no response category. This is called a non-sampling error. But when you're saying there's a sampling error, it is just because the sample is not representing the population. And still you're generalizing and saying that what I found in the sample is like this and therefore the population is like that. So I hope you have understood these basic concepts. Fundamentally, we need to understand this concept of what is a sample frame, what is a representative sample, what do you mean by sampling bias? That is, there are some units in the sample which are not likely to become part of the population. They are just left out. And there are several studies in social science based on some reasons. The sample is staying very far. Collection of data involves a lot of time. Collection of data involves complexity. So you just leave them out. There is no cross-sectional representation for that group. And still you're saying that you're sampling, you're biased in terms of selecting a particular group. And this is sampling error where there's a difference in the sample and the population, and yet you come out with the findings based on that sample, knowing well that it is not representative. Now there's a sampling error. And when you're saying non-sampling error, there's a difference in the sample and the population, but it is not because of sampling error, but because of the approach that you have adopted in the sample selection. Either the sample size is inadequate or there is no response. So these are certain things which are the essentials to understand when you take a sample. So fundamentally, if the process has to go strong, we need a representative sample. We need a representative sample. Otherwise, what you say will be true for that case, for that unit, for that response, but it might not be true for the population. And you will say that I've done it, then I got this response. So that is one factor which we need to consider prior to looking at the tools for collection. Now let us come to the techniques. We have probability sampling and non-probability sampling. In probability sampling, again, we have simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified sampling. And generally, probability sampling is used when we have a large population, because the idea is to get a representative sample. So when you have a large population and we do not know the exact heterogeneity of the population, because from each heterogeneous group we need to have a sample. So what we do is we take random and you pick from the entire population in a randomized form. And then our general notion is that when I've done that in that form, there is always a chance of getting a representative sample. Now just try to look at this. I'm coming to this once again. Now suppose I want to study, I'm giving examples so that you get it clear. Suppose I want to study savings habit of students in a college. Or how do students actually, let us leave savings habit, let us take spending habit, because they might not have adequate money, those who students are in the college. So spending habits. I would like to know how students are spending their pocket money, and my study is based in one college. So my purpose is to find out in one particular institution, I have a feeling that they are spending too much or something like that. So I want to find out how students are spending their pocket money based on one college. Now say this college has 1000 students. Now listen to me very carefully. But now my idea is I don't have time to study 1000 students. If you had time to study 1000 students based on the identified parameters, you can go to 1000 students and do a survey and collect data. But I don't have time to make a study on 1000 student, which is the population. And that is also my sample frame, because I'm not limiting the population in any form. So that's also my sample frame. And I would like to know how these 1000 students are spending their pocket money. Because I don't have time, I want a sample. And if I want a sample from this, I should ensure that it is a representative sample. That sample which I am taking should represent the population. And how many students are required to represent the population is based on the nature of the population. And what do you mean by nature of the population? The heterogeneity or homogeneity of the population. Where the population is homogeneous. Now just let us hypothetically take the fact that, let us hypothetically believe that this college has 1000 students who are exactly homogeneous. Hypothetically, let us believe that they are homogeneous in the sense that they all come from a similar background. They all come from the same income group. They all belong to the same gender. All of them are hostel students. All of them are from the same income category. All of them are from the same domicile category, urban or rural. So what I'm trying to say here, hypothetically, this is not something which happens in reality. Hypothetically, I'm saying that these 1000 students are either all are male or all are female. So they are having only one gender. Or they all come from the same income group. All their parents having an income between, say, 5 lakh and 6 lakh. All of them are coming from urban area. All of them are hostel students. Now, when I'm finding no variability at all, the entire population is 100% homogeneous, then in that case, perhaps even if I select one student, it will be okay. That is representative. Now look at this. Now this, as I said, is hypothetical. There is no chance of having a case like this. But when I look at the population, I find that there are boys and girls. So on the basis of gender, there are two categories. And I believe that gender is going to influence spending pocket money. So I need to have a sample from boys and girls. Now I take one representative from boy, one representative from girl. Then again I find that there are three income categories among the students in terms of the income of their parents. One is high income, then there's a middle income, and then there's a lower income. Then in these three incomes, I have to take boy and girl. So now it has from 1, it has become 2, and 2 has now become 3 into 2, 6. Again, I find that there are students who come from urban area and students who come from rural area. So I have to give representative from urban area and rural area. So high income, urban area, boy, girl. High income, rural area, boy, girl. So high income has got 4 representative groups. So also middle, so also small. Now the sample size is 12 because I gave representation to domicile, income, gender. Again, if I believe that the students there is a hostel group and a day scholar group which have different income levels, I have to take both. So 12 will become 24. So what are we trying to say? Greater the variability, greater the heterogeneity, larger will be the sample size. Greater the homogeneity, the sample size will become small. And here the problem which we need to understand when we come to academic research. Do we have to take sample on what basis will the population vary? At times, perhaps age might not be a variable. At times, domestic and foreign could be the variability. At times, urban, rural could be the variability. This is based on what is that you wanted to find out, your research question, and the conditions under which the population is existing. Now, when I said income, spending income will vary based on income. Large income, sorry, not income, pocket money will be based on income. So 3 income groups. Again, I find that the girls and boys spend in different ways. So gender is material. But age might not be material here because all the students belong to the same age group. So on which basis are you selecting the sample? It should be based on how the population will vary in terms of its segments, in terms of its variability. And greater the homogeneity, smaller the size, greater the heterogeneity, larger the size. That's why I said, when I take a few drops of blood, it contains all the heterogeneous elements which are there in the population. So now probability sampling, coming back to this. When I said students, I can naturally understand on what basis this 1000 students will vary. But suppose I want to study how all the students in one state, all the college students in a state, there could be something like 2 lakh, 3 lakh or 5 lakh students. 5 lakh students in different colleges. How do they spend their pocket money? Now, for me to understand the entire variability of the population, which is so large, becomes a bit complex. So what I do, I say, let me take 10% based on random numbers. So all the entire group, I take 10%. But every unit has a chance of becoming part of the sample. There is no sampling bias. In this 10,000, if I'm saying that, okay, north extreme, I'm leaving out 4 colleges, then I have sampling bias. But I'm not doing that. I understand that there are 3 lakh students. I want to get a sample of 10%. 10% because I believe that 10% will represent the entire group, and I'm taking it in terms of probability sampling, where every unit has a chance of getting selected. So this is probability sampling. It totally removes sampling bias. And I do not know which are the units which are getting selected because I'll be going by random numbers, or I'll be going by strata, or I'll be going by a systematic method. This is probability sampling. So it has three methods. Now let us come to one of these or each of these methods. First, simple random sampling. The basic feature is that all units have equal chance to be selected. Something like taking a lottery. If there are 500 customers or 50,000 customers, I put the 50,000 numbers consecutively from 1 to 50,000 and then I go by random numbers. That is called simple random sampling. So look at the process. You have first identified the population, then the sample frame. From the population, if there are any limiting factors, you decide the sample frame. Then you decide the sample size, either based on some of the formulae, or you decide the variability and decide the sample size. Now, let us take an example. There are 9,000 students in a college. I am taking students only with 1 year of college life. So there are only 8,000 such students. So population is 9,000. Sample frame is 8,000. And I'm saying that the adequate sample size is say 500. Now what I'm doing, I number the units in the frame consecutively. That is, this 8,000 students who are there in the frame are consecutively numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 8,000. And then I use tables of random numbers, or now you have softwares for that, to select 450 out of it. This is called simple random sampling. That means every unit can get a chance. And when I'm doing that, picking 1, 2, 3, 4 like that up to 500, I believe that the variability in the population gets captured in the sample. That is simple random sampling. Now we go to systematic sampling. We are drawing sample again from a large population. But then here we are not using a random table or a program. We are using a random starting point. And then you are selecting the sample in terms of fixed periodic intervals. Say, for example, I am saying that the first sample that I will take, suppose I want a sample of, say, again 500. The first sample that I take will be a random number. Suppose the random number comes to 504. So I'll say, let me start. The first sample will be number 4. And then I'm saying that every 10th will be selected. So 4, 14, 24, 34, 44, 54. In that order, I'll continue. That means one random starting point with a fixed periodic interval. The starting point here was 4 and the fixed interval is 10. So I'm taking that in that form. But I'm not going by the table format here. This is called systematic sampling. This is again used when I'm taking 4, 14, 24, 34, I believe that all the variables which are there in all the heterogeneity that is there in the population will automatically get captured in the sample. That is systematic sampling. Now you have stratified sampling. Here you're stratifying the population by a criteria and then drawing the sample. Now what is that criteria? That is again based, as we were discussing yesterday, it's again based on what is your research question. Now suppose I'm saying that the population of, let us say, residents in a city is something like 1 lakh. Then I'm trying to look at what are the stratas. It could be based on the wards. It could be based on the gender. It could be based on income. And I classify that. And I say that 3 income groups out of the 1 lakh, 40,000 is in the lower income group, 30,000 is in the middle income group, and 30,000 is in the lower income group. This is the population. So the population has been put into 3 strata based on income. Or when I'm looking at one district, I say that 60% of the people in that in that district are urban and 40% are rural. Now the population is 1 strata urban, 1 strata rural. Now if I have a sample size of 500 or something, I take it exactly proportionate with this in terms of the strata. So stratas are formed based on what is your research objective. At times, it can be on the basis of domicile, age, gender, type of products. When you study tribes, it can be the population of different sects of the different tribes, or it can be the consumers. Consumers are again classified in terms of what you call high net worth consumers and low net worth consumers. If you're doing something in the capital market, high net worth investors, retail investors. So these are stratas. So from the strata, you're saying. So in the first case, there is no stratification. In the second case, also there's no stratification. But if you believe that you want an adequate number to come from each strata, you're going by the probability method, but you're fixing it on the basis of strata. So that is stratified sampling. So these are some of the methods which we use when you're using probability method. So here the sampling bias is not likely to happen because we are not going in terms of researcher's decision in getting a sample. We are going either by random numbers, or we are going by simple systematic sampling, or we are going by stratas and taking the probability of a unit getting included from each strata is also predetermined. So these are the probability methods. Now let us go to the non-probability method. Now here, all the units do not have an equal chance of getting selected. The researcher is using the researcher's wisdom or researcher's choice in getting a unit to be in the sample. So here you have convenience. So the only factor here is researcher's convenience. I want a sample of 100 students. I take whoever 100 student first comes to me, or whoever is convenient for me, or whoever is staying near me. I want 500 customers. I go and try and catch hold of any number of customers whom I get at my convenience. That is convenience sampling. So it's least scientific. The chance of sampling bias is very high over here, because according to your convenience, you took somebody based on ease, based on quick speed in collection, or based on inability to spend time. So there might be some very representative sample who are far off, or who did not come to your convenience, and you have left them out. So it's not at all scientific, but then at times we can say that, okay, I have taken a sample, but this was the way I took it. Another form, which is what you call, again, convenience only, but we call it snowball sampling. Now, what we do here is, here there is, it's initial actually, INITIAL. Initially you contact groups, and then you contact further people from them. So I get one person who's a customer, and then I'm asking, do you know any other customer? Say, for example, in certain cases where institution does not give us data, the institution is not giving us the right data. Say, suppose I want to study NPA of banks. Obviously, the bank is not going to give you the details of customers who have defaulted, because as per RBI guidelines, the bank is not supposed to give details of customers. So I'm not going to get details of defaulting customer. So what I do is, I find out one of the based on my personal contact, I get in touch with one customer who has taken loan from that bank. But one customer is not sufficient for me to be a representative sample. So what I'm doing is I'm asking him, do you know any other customer who has not repaid loan? So he says, I have two other contacts. So initial contact group, from that I take more contacts, and from them I take further contacts, and I create a sample. So here also I go on collecting based on contact and contacts of contacts, but then that also might not always be a very representative sample. Then there is something called quota sampling. Here the population is divided into different categories, just like what you do in stratified. But stratified, the entire population is divided in terms of the full sample size, and then you go probability based from the strata. But here it is not like that. You just divide the population by saying that there are 3 categories or 4 categories. Category can be, as I said, urban, rural, male, female, or it can be different income groups, or it can be government, private employees, whatever. Based on that category, this category is called a quota. I take from each of them. And I just take each of them. I'm not giving each unit a chance of being selected. I take some units from them. And that is not based on the entire population. Every unit does not have an equal chance for getting it, but I do it on a non-probability base. This is called quota sampling. Then again, you have purposive sampling or judgment sampling. Now, this is a method which intentionally you're intentionally selected by a researcher. It's based on some specific characteristics. As I said that I want customers who have made 5 purchases in a month. So there is a purpose. The purpose is to select only because I'm trying to look at features of a product. So I believe that if you are a customer, you might not know the features if you have purchased only once. Or I would like to get some information about effectiveness of the curriculum of a particular program in a university or in a college. But if I ask a student who has just joined, the student might not know much about the curriculum. So I'm saying that the student must have at least completed 2 semesters. This is a criteria. Or I want people to give their awareness about investing in the capital market. But then I'm sure, because I'm trying to identify how they invest in terms of the demat features, in terms of the charges that are charged by the broker and so on. But if I take all investors, some of them might not have a DP account. So I'm saying those who have a DP account and those who have traded for at least 5 months, or maybe those who have at least some 10 transactions in a year will be included in the sample. So this is called purposive sampling. But the criterion again must be logical in terms of the sequence that you are adopting. It must be logical, because otherwise your purpose is related to what again is your research question. So there you're becoming purposive. And in purposive, again, at times you can also have some judgment. Say, for example, I would like to something like what happens in an exit poll. You would like to know what is the chance of a person winning the coming elections. Counting is yet to take place. Now, there in that particular constituency, there could be category of voters who fall into different segments. There could be youth, there could be age, there could be there could be employed, unemployed people, there could be unorganized, organized people, there could be professionals, non-professionals, and all of them have a different voting pattern. Now, your purposive sampling can be in terms of, if I select these 10 people who are the youth in college, they will represent the entire youth. So you're judging them to be representatives of the youth. Or if I take these professionals and ask them whom they have voted for, that will be the representation of the entire professionals. So that way I am judging that what these people will give in terms of their reply will be representative for. So I have a purpose behind that. So purpose could either be based on period of use, based on type of consumption, based on frequency of purchase, based on what you want to find out. So I'm becoming deliberate. I'm intentionally selecting someone who has met with certain characteristics. That is what is called purposive sampling. So you can have this purposive sampling methods also when you're using your sampling. But now here there is something which is different. Maybe when your sample is highly based on intentional use. If you go for probability sampling, even though there is no sampling bias, there is a chance that you might not get a sample who has the propensity to meet the characteristics. Say, for example, as I said earlier, I want some reflections on curriculum, and I go by random sampling. There is a chance that a large number of the respondents have not passed through a particular program, but yet they become part of the sample. But when I'm purposive, I've avoided those people and I've taken only them. Otherwise, what I should do is, in probability sampling, I should say my population is this much, but I'm avoiding those who are in the first year and having a lower sample frame and then going by probability sampling. So these are some of the guidelines which are crucial when we are going for the sample. Now, how to decide the sample size? This is what we just saw. We need to know the population. That's what I was talking about in terms of the college. How will they vary? The pocket money case, heterogeneity, the characteristics. Then again, the sample size is also based on the time that you have. Suppose I want a quick response. we don't have time to go for it, then you have to go for a smaller sample. Again, it's also based on the cost. How much time you can spend, how much money you can spend. If you have adequate money for going for a detailed study, yes. It's also based on the response rate. If your response rate is not coming up to the desired level, accordingly, you have to tune your sample size. It's also based on the analysis that has to be done. So based on these factors, primarily we decide what should be the sample size. Now I'm coming to collection of primary data, what we saw in terms of or connecting with the design which we saw yesterday. We first normally use interviews, which are structured, which are semi-structured, which are unstructured, which are focused interview, or where you have a focus group. Now, all this is collecting information. When I'm saying interview, the researcher himself or herself goes to the respondent and through a schedule that they have in terms of what information they want, they are asking the respondents certain questions and getting it entered or getting it recorded. That is interview. Now, when I'm saying structured, now here is something which you should be very careful. You are giving the possible options also. What I'm asking a question and I'm also giving the probable answer. So it is close-ended. That is called structured. So suppose, do you agree to what I'm saying? So the answer to it is only yes or no. Or there are three reasons for something. This is the first reason. I'm putting it as A. Second reason as B. Third reason. And I'm saying which among this reason you believe is correct. I'm asking you one way of leaving it open-ended. What is the problem that you face? It's open-ended. Whereas I'm saying which of the following is the problem that you think is affecting this? Now it is close-ended, structured. So in some cases, there will be an interview where for some it is structured, for some question it is not structured. That is called semi-structured. And in many qualitative research specifically, the research is entirely unstructured. No answers are given. No options are given. It is left unstructured. Now, this is again related to what is your design. If your design is a descriptive research, you cannot leave your interview unstructured because descriptive research is trying to look at characteristics, reasons, factors, problems from among those which are known. So when those are known, you have to give the options and collect it in tune with that. But if you're doing exploratory research, you can never put options. You can never make both. This is applicable both for questionnaire as well as interview. So I won't be repeating this again in questionnaire. If I'm using a descriptive research, then my interview is structured. My questionnaire can be structured. But if I'm using an exploratory one, I have no characteristics with me. I have no preliminary facts or options which can be given. So it has to be left unstructured. So your interview can be structured, semi-structured, or unstructured. For some questions, I don't have a direct answer. So I'm asking them to give whatever they think of. Focused interview, your interview is done specifically with some questions which are related to a situation or event. It is focused on a particular situation or it is focused on a particular event. Suppose there was let us say the plane crash, or let us say something which happened as a result of a corona, or we are saying that there was a massive case of what do you call disasters which happened in a village. So on that situation that created that emerged out of it, I'm asking questions only related to that. Did you lose your home? What is the kind of assets that you lost? I'm just focusing it on that. This is called focus interview. And the focus interview, just like it is focusing on on a theme or a situation, the same interview I can do it with a group. Now, what is happening here? I'm trying to elicit the views of people individuals who are in a group. Generally, this group will be a group of experts, a group of people who are involved in policy, and a group of people, maybe the common person. Now, instead of going to these three groups separate, I'm trying to get cross-linked response. That means if I ask an expert, the expert will give his views alone. If I ask a professional, the professional is giving his views alone about that event. If I'm asking a ordinary person, lay person, that person gives their views alone. But I want the group, I want the experts to understand what the common man feels. I want the experts to understand what the professional feels. And when they put their views in convergence, what is the emerging thought which comes out? So I bring these three group, this focus group together, and I ask them to certain questions. So it's something like a kind of a group discussion, but it is focused on one theme. And I'm recording the facts. I'm saying, what is your view? Then I'm saying, this common man is saying like this. What do you feel being in policy or being a professional or being an expert? That is how I'm gathering. That's called a focus group. But in both focus interview and in a focus group, you're collecting information basically on a situation or on an event, which is the subject matter of focus. So that's where interviews go. Again, further, you have interviews which are called in-depth interviews, intensive interviews. That means first you gather some preliminary facts. Again, based on that, you add some more facts. Then you go deeper, deeper, deeper into the intricacies, into the complexities, into the relatedness, into the other factors. So it's an in-depth interview. Then you can also have something called ethnographic interview. This happens in what we call ethnography. Ethnography means participating and getting results. This is something which is highly intensive in approach, because I would like to know, but there are cases where, just try and understand this, there are cases where you cannot interview people. They are not in a position to give answers to your question. They don't understand your language. Or even if they understand their language, they are not in a position to grasp the, the logic behind this interview. So maybe something like tribes, maybe something like the people who live in forest. So I would like to understand their culture, their belief. I can't just ask them, what do you believe, or how do you think, or how do you feel? These questions will not work because they are not in a position to express that. So what can you do? You will have to participate with them. You perhaps have to live with them. And living with them, you go on asking different things which might be meaningful or might be related, and you get to know more about them. That is how you understand cultures, value system, local condition, things about certain ethnic groups, ethnic tribes. This is called ethnographic interview. And that might involve a wide variety of things, but not directly, because it's not asking that, what is your level of satisfaction? What is your belief on this? It's not like that. Very casually, you participate with them and you push through whatever you try. And then by living with them, participating with them, you elicit some facts. This is called ethnographic interview. It is relatively costly, it's relatively difficult, and at times it's relatively complex. Because as I said, suppose you want to go and get some details about some tribes who will not very easily talk to you. We say, okay, you live with them and collect data, but at times if you start living with them, they might kill you. So how do you get to know them? So you might require yet another person's intervention to have ethnographic interviews. In some cases, yes, you can become a part of them. And then you slowly try to get in. Also, there are conditions in which interviews do not work. Like say, for example, young babies. So you're either based on observation, or you're doing certain things in terms of a deep in-depth interview there. Then life history interview. So this is a getting biographic details of individuals. So your interview is just asking a very open question. These are all qualitative research, in-depth qualitative research. You're asking a question, I would like to know about an individual's life. So I very openly ask him, tell us something about your life. So he might be talking about his birth, the village where he was born, the conditions under which he was born, and then perhaps he will support. What about your education? What about your parents? What about your first job? And at what age did you marry, or what was your family system? So all questions are actually focused around life, because I would like to get history on life. And this can happen in terms of oral history of even situations and events. So all these are the different, what do you call, methods under which interviews are actually held. Now it's again based on what is your research issue. Do you want to get a biographic sketch and do research maybe on people who live in particular place? Or do you want to understand culture, value systems?
Recording stopped.
Or do you want to understand certain
Recording in
factors
progress.
relating to the general kind of characteristics of age, consumption, markets? It's all based on what you want. Accordingly, are you describing characteristics, or are you trying to dig into specific events, then you or specific situations or specific problems? Then it is focus interview. So this is how interviews go. Now, when you conduct an interview, this is very important. First and most important thing, that's what we were trying to look at since yesterday, is keep the design in perspective. If you believe that the characteristics are already known, I would like to study about a particular industry. The characteristics of that industry is already known. I would like to study what is actually affecting a particular sector. And there are certain given number of problems, and I would like to know which among them. So in that case, it's descriptive research. Or I want to know which among the several reasons which are attributed, theoretically the reasons have been said. Now I want to know which among this reason is influencing. These are all descriptive researches. And in that case, I can use a structured questionnaire because I have the possible answers with me. So I use a structured questionnaire. So keeping design perspective. If you want to establish cause-effect relationship, then you'll have to find out the association between variables. Then in that case, you have to characterize one or give one as an independent, other as a dependent. And then your design should be experimental. And your question should move on that experimental format. So knowing the design, keeping the design in perspective is very important. Then know the schedule. Schedule means the tool that you're using for collecting the data. If you're doing an interview, you call it a schedule. If you're doing it in the other form, by getting it sent maybe by mail or by email or whatever, then you call it a questionnaire. So in both these cases, if it is for an interview, you should know the schedule. If it is for a questionnaire, also you should know the questionnaire. And that knowledge is based on materiality, which we were trying to look at yesterday. We need to elicit only material facts. Suppose you're just very casually asked to prepare a questionnaire or prepare a list of questions for a schedule. Then you ask some questions based on what is your age, where is your domicile, what is the marital status, what is the income that you have, what is the type of job. You ask many questions initially, and then you come to the main research objectives. But subsequently in your analysis, you will find that nowhere there is an analysis based on marital status. Then why did you ask that question? Or in this research question that I have, marital status has got nothing to do with the population or with the results. Now you have asked a question which is a fact but not a material fact. It does not influence the result in that particular research. So we are supposed to ask only material facts. That is why I said, when a patient goes to a doctor and the patient tells the doctor that my head is aching, the doctor asks some questions like, when did this start? Which part of your head is aching? Were you exposed to sun? He's asking some questions. And these questions are common with all doctors across the world. If any patient goes to any doctor, maybe in South India, North India, or in US or Europe, they all ask the same questions. Why they're asking the same questions? Because these questions are material questions. They are related to the theories of headache. Patient has reported headache. So he's asking questions which are related to the theories of headache. And that is for them to have a hypothesis. That's what I said initially. If they ask these questions and get so first they're asking, do you have any problem with the stomach? Did you take some food from outside? Then they come to the hypothesis that this is not because of indigestion. Or the patient says that I took some food from outside. After that, I have that acidic tendency and then my head is aching. Then they relate it to acidic attack. And that is based on their theory. Based on the theory and what this person has given as reply to the question. That is what we're saying, eliciting material facts. Now, when you're asking marital status and nowhere it is part of analysis, nowhere it is influencing the result, then it is not at all a material fact, though it might be a fact. So that is very important. Then introduce the research. That means you are going to collect some data from somebody through an interview. The interviewee, the researcher is the interviewer, and the interviewee need to understand why are you asking this data. Only then the true purpose is understood, and accordingly they can give the information. So you must introduce your research. I'm trying to find cause-effect relationship. I'm trying to find the problem here, or I'm trying to find certain cultural aspects, or I'm trying to find how economic status has changed. So based on that, I'll give my result. So that's why you're introducing the research. For interviews, we need to have a rapport. Relationship might not be that important in questionnaire because they are not seeing the researcher. But when you're face to face in an interview, relationship is very important. Otherwise, they might not give the right kind of information. So establishing relationship. Then you ask the questions with clarity. With clarity. Otherwise, you will ask a question where you had something in mind, but that is not what the interviewee understood. So ask questions with clarity. You need to record answers. Either you have to write because you're asking the question to the interviewee, who is the respondent. They are not recording. So you have to record. Whereas in a questionnaire, they'll be recording in the questionnaire itself. So recording can be maybe you take it in writing or you make a what do you call direct record through a digital device, whatever. There must be clarity in instructions. You must answer in this form. We want an unbiased answer. This purpose is like this. We are using it for this. When I'm asking the period of use, when I'm asking number of use, when I'm asking this, this is what I mean. That should be there. Clarity in instructions must be there. Then again, probing and prompting is something that is the biggest advantage of interview, which is not there in questionnaire. Because if the person has not understood, the respondent has not understood what you're trying to ask, you can probe further, or the respondent is giving suppose you're asking, are you aware about something? So the person says yes. And then to a subsequent question of that product, he's giving a different answer. So now you can probe. Earlier you said yes, but now you are not able to recollect why that is happening. You're probing. Or earlier you said you know about this college, or you said you have studied in this college, but now when I'm asking you, you do not know. So you can probe further. That option is not there in a questionnaire. You can give some, uh, it is not promoting, sorry, it is prompting actually. You can give a prompting there. Prompting in the sense that you are giving some clues. Suppose you want to collect some information about maybe an Ayurvedic brand of toothpaste. But when you are asking question, this person is talking about the general toothpaste. So you can give a prompt there. You can give an aid there, a recall aid there, saying that, do you know about some Ayurvedic toothpaste? So you can prompt and they can then get response. This prompting is also not available when we are talking about talking about questionnaire, because the questionnaire is already gone. So probing and prompting does take place. Sequencing and filters. So which question should come first, which question should follow, and there should be some filters. Filters are showing the quality. Say for instance, have you used this product? Person says yes. How many times have you used this product? He says 4 times. Then after that, you're asking something about that very product. That person says, I do not know anything. Or you're asking about the color about that, he does not know anything. So if he has used it 4 times, he should know. So then you're saying I'm going to filter the first question based on what this person is subsequently answering. So it's a check kind of a thing, which happens when you're looking at these questions which are there in place. So interview looks at all these factors when you conduct the interview. So that's it. Now again, questionnaire. I'm not spending much time on this because I think already I've talked about structured, semi-structured, and unstructured. The designs are the same. The only difference here is in an interview, the researcher is collecting it through a schedule, and that is more time. I'll come to that a bit later. But in the questionnaire, it is drafted, it is sent to the respondent. Might be sent through a research assistant, or might be sent through mail, or might be sent through email, whatever, it goes. Other features like being structured, semi-structured, and unstructured is almost similar to what you have when we were discussing the interviews. Now, here, questionnaire formulation, you have to keep the design in perspective as we discussed earlier. Then again, we must understand objectives, because you might be having research question, and based on those questions, you formulate objectives. But suddenly you are designing the questionnaire because you don't get a second chance to, what do you call, probe further. You don't get a second chance. It's not a longitudinal research. So one chance you want to get information. You don't get a chance to explain further. You don't get a chance to prompt or give a recall. So in that case, what happens is you have to examine your objectives and ensure whether all the details which are required for all the listed objectives are getting covered in your questionnaire. So what you ideally do is, when you prepare the blueprint of that questionnaire before it is administered, you map it with the objectives and ensure that all the objectives are covered. That's what we are saying, ensure coverage. And again, materiality, as we said earlier, elicit material facts. Don't just ask questions for the sake of questions. At times, you're going to an organization to collect information from an employee. That employee is a respondent. And perhaps one of your questions is name of the organization. Now, when you go to organization A, you can directly give a code to the questioner for that organization. Suppose I'm saying that AC is the code, AC1. AC1 will represent organization so such and such. So all questioners which have this code represents that organization. So I can avoid asking question on name of the organization. And in that organization, I'm selecting only those, maybe because of my sample frame, I'm selecting those who have got a minimum service of 5, and I know the maximum is this. Then again, I'm asking a question, how many years of service you have? So unnecessary question, because the time of the respondent is precious. You have to keep in mind what is the number of questions that we can actually put across in this particular case. So materiality is very, very important. We need to add. Otherwise, it's like you'll see some questions which are never addressed, some questions which have got no relationship with any objective, some question on which no further analysis is done. And then your research tool is something which is used as an evidence of validity and is also put along with your research report. And somebody will say, this is question was asked, but it is not coming anywhere. So that's what materiality is actually addressing. Now, look at the difference. When you're following a schedule, it is costly. Interview schedule, because you are going personally, traveling. The researcher travels personally to the point of the interview and collects data, so it's costly. Whereas at one point I prepare the questionnaire and I send it by post or by email to any number of places. So I'm not personally going there, I'm not personally meeting the respondents, so it's cheaper. The other one, your interview is time consuming. This is a bit faster. Probing is possible. This is not possible here because once an answer is given, that questionnaire is submitted. It's not possible. Prompting is possible here. You can give clues, you can give recall methods, but that's not possible here. Deep rapport is possible. Here it's not possible because I see the person, I talk casually to the person, I might perhaps stay with the person, and as I said in ethnography, I might even participate with that person for some time. I also observe what is he behaving. I observe the conditions under which he is. If I feel that he is stressed, I might not ask questions at that time. All that is possible, but that is not possible in a questionnaire. When he gets it, we don't know the condition under which he is. So, and maybe he is not responding. 1 day is over, 2 days is over, last day has come. So you go on asking, giving him reminders, and he gets fed up with it, and he might give some reply. So that issue is there. But then still, questionnaire is cheaper and faster. And in the greatest advantage of questionnaire is that it can have a wider coverage. I can get data from across different states, different districts, because I'm not personally going. But if you want to interview people in different states, not that it is impossible, it will have more repercussions in terms of cost, time, issues. So limited coverage. This is the basic difference which we need to keep in. These are things which we even otherwise know, but we need to keep it in perspective when we are looking at data collection. Now, observation. Now, let us understand this. Okay, interview is something which we have used, and question is also something which we very widely use. But how many of us actually use observations? Observations are not used because of some reasons, because at times we get a feeling that how do you validate that I have observed? To validate my questionnaire, I'm attaching the questionnaire along with the report. To validate my interview, I'm giving the interview schedule at the end of my report. But how do I validate my observation? But observations can also be validated in terms of pictures, in terms of recordings, which are even geotagged. You can say that at this point of time, I took this picture at this place and I saw this. When it comes to some factors relating to cleanliness, we have seen researchers which talk about how clean is your campus. This is something which we can directly observe. Maybe not one point observation, maybe twice or thrice you observe, and you say that I found these observations, these are the pictures. How much time it takes to get a check cleared or get a document cleared. You can also use observation and experiment there and try and find out how it takes place. So certain things can happen even through observation. And also understand that some primary data at times is collected or can be collected only through observation. Or there are cases where both interviewing and questionnaire is not possible. Those are the conditions which I have now given there. Direct assessment is possible. That means I can see and understand the conditions. So I need not actually ask questions. I can take pictures and validate it. I can bring recordings and validate it. Then interviews and questionnaire cannot be administered or cannot be administrated. It cannot be administered because of certain reasons. One, suppose I'm studying the behavior of kids. I can observe, but the kids are not in a position to respond. I would like to study the behavior of people who have got some problems in communication. Yes, if I'm conversant with sign language, I can use. Otherwise, I can observe. So there are cases where you can observe. Interview is not possible. Again, in some cases, interview is possible or questionnaire is possible, but the research findings that you get from the questionnaire might not validate the process, because the answer that they give to the interview or the answer that they give to the questionnaire might not be the true answer. Say, for example, suppose in textile industry, I'm doing a survey on color preference for what do you call textiles. Let it be saris or chudidars like that. I would like to ascertain color preference. Now, if I'm asking which among the following colors you like while buying a shirt or buying a sari or whatever, I might tick blue or green or red or whatever. But that might not be my true preference when you look at my cognitive or mental choice when I go to a shop. So their observation is like you have to observe eye to color contact, eye to choice contact, and that is the right methodology rather than asking them which you choose. So also suppose when I want to study stress, you might ask the person, are you feeling stressed in an interview, or what is your level of stress on a 5-point scale? Now, that person might say 3 or 4 or 1 or 2. But that is not the methodology of knowing the level of stress, because that might not reflect the conditions under which that person is. So that might require observation under psychological methods rather than asking, are you stressed? So there are certain cases which you cannot actually get results from interviews or from questionnaires. Then there are certain cases, as I said earlier, where participation and experiencing is very important. That is where we talked about ethnography. I cannot go and ask questions, they will not give me the answers. They behave in a different form. That is where I said ethnic groups, tribes, or even people like who behave in a different form in a different condition. Say, for example, how people interact in a bar. Those who are drinking liquor. Now, if I would like to know their behavioral change, I can't participate over there. I can't, because if I participate, my condition also will be bad. I cannot participate, and or other words, I cannot go and ask them now after taking this much liquor, what is your thought? I cannot do an interview. I cannot ask them to fill a questionnaire. There, what I can see is I can only observe. So there are different cases. Certain cases, participation is possible, and the only way to get answer is participation. That's why I said be one among them, learn by interacting with them, but not by asking questions. You just be part with them. Maybe you are living with them, you're dining with them, you're taking food with them, you're moving with them. And then from that, you understand culture, value, beliefs, thoughts, preferences. That is participative research. Experiencing comes, classic case is what you might have heard about tea tasters, catering technology. There, what the taste is something which is recorded through experiencing. You get an experience and then you say, my experience was this. So in some research, you're exposed to the experience. And then you're saying, you write your experience, or you from your experience, it can be observed. So in catering technology, it's widely based. Most of the dishes, tea that they prepare, strength of the tea, quality of the tea is always not taken in terms of asking the chef to grade the quality of the tea. The experts are actually tasting it and then they are recording their experience. So experiencing is also a method that we can use in research. So these are all the methods of collecting primary data. So let us understand that interviews, questionnaires are two widely used methods, but they also can be structured, unstructured, or semi-structured. And there are cases where these will not be sufficient, so you'll have to observe. There are cases where even observation is not possible, perhaps you'll have to participate. And there are cases in which your experience by being a part of it is what actually gives the true facts. Now, experiments. When I was saying experiencing was something, now we are coming to experiments. You judge outcomes. You do something just like you do an experiment in a laboratory. You do some social science activities, and then from that you get the data, not by asking questions. Color preference, I already mentioned. Identification. Say for children, when you're doing research on toys, color choice of children, you see how they react to the different toys. How are they identifying factors? Even for those who are affected by different diseases, their ability to identify is something which is taken as an experiment. Brand recall is yet another experiment which is done in marketing, again, social science research. Brand recall is you're not asking questions to a person, but you're doing an experiment with them. You're just asking them to recall the brand names. Suppose you're asking them to recall the brand names of maybe soaps or toothpaste. So they say Colgate, Pepsodent, things like that. The order in which they recall, number 1 is given 10 points, number 2 is given 9 points, number 3 is given 8 points, so on and so forth. And then you go on conducting this experiment. Then there is something called aided recall. In that aided recall, you wanted to get something, as I said earlier, in terms of some aspects. As I said, Ayurveda toothpaste. So they are not, it is not coming in the recall that they're doing. So you give them aided, but then when it is aided, you reduce the points because they didn't recall at the first instance. So this is something where brand recall can be done. Experiments. In finance, there is an experiment on risk assessment. Because risk is not something which you can ask and understand. If you have this much of money, what risk you will take when you invest? Or what risk you will take into venture into an event which is highly risky in terms of outcomes? Or how much risk you will take in interacting with some people in this form? It's very difficult. So you assess risk in terms of how they perform in certain events. Give them some dummy money and say that these are the options and this is what you'll get and how are you going to react? Or ask them to uh, uh, do an event like throwing off the ball and giving it points. If you throw from this distance, you will get 100 points. If you throw from a longer distance, you will get 500 points, but the chance of the ball going out is high. So that shows your risk taking capacity. Somebody who don't wants to take risk will put the ball at a shorter distance and will be happy with 100 points. The other case is the basket is still far away. You can throw it into it. The chance of the ball falling into the basket might be lesser, but if it falls, you will get 500 points. Risk assessment. Purchase pattern. Giving again some dummy money and saying that you have 5 minutes, do whatever purchase you want, and then what is the factor that went into your selection? So these are all experiments. Many of these are used in finance, marketing, also in, of course, in laboratory conditions. Most of it is experiments, but we are talking about social science now. Okay. Now we move into participation. Ethnography, I already said, recording of experience. Ethnography is a highly qualitative research where continuous involvement and participation is done with the local community. And then it is an understanding that you have by being with them. And partially in some communities, ethnography takes place just because of your stay, exposing your people to that reality is there. And in such case, recording of experiences is very important because this might get drained after some time, so you need to have it with you. Now, there is also one more method called content analysis. This is an objective, systematic, and quantitative description of the content of communication. It's something like your bibliometrics. That means the research is done by looking at some documents and text which has been published. So because of technology that you have today, we can have numerous databases where this relationship can be established. Say, for example, I can do a content analysis on the National Education Policy, which was published in 2020. This document can have maybe 1,000+ pages, and I'm trying to find out through my research how much of importance is given to interdisciplinary research. Now, I do a content analysis on this document by finding out the number of times the word interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research is used. So, the research will say that this word is used in this 1,000 pages, maybe 102 times, and in relation to these concepts. And I post that and say that interdisciplinary research is very important as per NEP 2020, because it's just like, that's why I said bibliometrics. Now you have very advanced databases, something like Bloomberg and things like that, where suppose I want to know representation of women directors, but I'm not going a representation of women directors in all listed companies worldwide. I want to know the representation of women directors because I'm studying the involvement of gender in companies. But I don't have time to go to all listed companies in the world. But there is a database called Bloomberg where all published annual reports are coming. So I can do a content analysis, a search on that, and find out women directors who have signed reports in all the content documents which have come out from listed companies. And I can get from that the representation is so much. So analysis of documents and text, which will actually express the content. So here, there is no interview, there is no questionnaire, there is no observation. There is no participation, there is no ethnography, and there is no experiencing also. I look at certain published facts and I say that this word is used this many times here. This text shows this factor to have this much of importance. And I'm saying through that, this document produces this. This is my finding. So that's called content analysis. So these are some of the methods. Going again into second. So we have finished with the primary data. Now, secondary data, it is already there. And understand also that now we have something called real-time data. Real-time data is the data which is consistently being updated through databases. Now you can have details of savings, details of investment patterns, details of financial inclusion in different districts which are continuously being updated. Annually, you have data on migration. So these are all continuously gathered and used for different purposes. The advantage is that it is not time, the time and cost involved is very less. I'm not preparing a tool. I'm not preparing a schedule or a questionnaire. I'm not going anywhere. And there is published data. Now, when the published data is valid and reliable and easily available and accessible, it's not always necessary that you should collect primary data. Doing a primary data-based research on the extent of financial inclusion or the extent of savings and income that is there in one village or one district, and saying that this is your research finding, perhaps will not have that much of validity, because the outside world will say, why are you doing this for one district? We're using your own method when secondary data is available for all districts or even all states. So our purpose of secondary data, which is already available, you must see whether it is suitable to your conditions. The advantage is it is time and cost involved is less. Generally, the quality of data will be good because biases possibility is not there, but the purpose will be generic. Primary data, you're collecting it for a specific purpose. This will be for a generic purpose. But since it is standardized, since it is through expertise, quality will be good. Longitudinal design can be adopted. That's one advantage. That means at one point of time you take it from the same group, the second time automatically comes. Second, because once I'm saying updated real-time data on savings and investment, savings and income, with the same group, it is repeated. That data is available. So longitudinal data is possible. Subgroup analysis is possible because they are giving the savings of people in different villages, urban, rural, classified subgroups, different age groups, organized, unorganized, subgroups are there inside it. And another great advantage is because you are not spending too much of time. Otherwise, in primary data, most of your time is spent on data collection. Here, since the data is readily available, more time is available for analysis. Limitations is basically we have to judge suitability. In some cases, it's very suitable. In some cases, maybe suppose you want data on migration, but you want data on migration of an ethnic minority community. That is not there in the secondary data. Perhaps they have migration of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and a wider religious group. That is what we say the migration survey. But that data is not giving of this ethnic minority. So that's not suitable because you want to know the migration of that ethnic minority itself. So suitability. Reliability. Reliability, whether the findings will get affected if you use secondary data. In many cases, it might not get affected because it serves the purpose. Then complexity. The data might have been complex in different forms because it's collected for a general purpose. And access to the archive or the database. When I said Bloomberg, I'm not directly getting secondary data in a published form in an open access format. If you want to get data from the database like Bloomberg, I have to pay for the terminal. So that might be, or I must subscribe to it. So once it is not subscribed, that data is not available. Secondary data is available, but it is available only on a paid format. So access becomes a big issue. And finally, we should guard against what we call the ecological fallacy. Assuming that what you infer, when you infer something about the individual based on findings of the aggregate data. That means from the total data, what you get, you're assuming that that will also be there in the sample. Suppose you're saying that you got that this ethnic minority or this group, one group, whatever group it is, that group people have committed a lot of crimes. Let us say, example, I'm getting that this based on secondary data during a particular period, crimes have been committed by one group, whatever be that group, one age group or people in one village or people in one community, whatever. They have committed lot of crimes according to secondary data. Now, when I'm taking one individual in that group, my presumption is that this individual is also a person who has committed a crime. This is what we call ecological fallacy. So in secondary data, we are saying the data shows this picture. So anybody who comes, a unit which comes under that, deductively you're saying has that feature. That is what the limitations of secondary data. Yeah, okay. Yeah, secondary, the last part, just one more slide which is missing. I'll just put that across. Now, this being the case of data, what we are trying to do. So now we have seen primary data, we have seen secondary data, we have seen suitability, reliability, and how to collect. Now the position, what we have to cover, what remains here is only how do you relate this in terms of the hypothesis that you have, in terms of the theory that you have, and in terms of the research questions that you have formulated. So that is based on what actually decides the variables and what actually goes into the frame. So when that is very clear to you, that's why in the beginning we said you should be very clear about what is the problem. I was trying to put across in the first session, not yesterday's session, the session before that. Research primarily attempts to answer only two questions. Number one question is, what is that you wanted to find out? And number two is, what is that? How is that you found it out? So what is that you wanted to find out is the primary problem. And based on that problem, you have your research questions. Those questions actually emerge in terms of the existing literature that is there. You have a gap and you have a hypothesis. And I was trying to tell you that you don't have a good hypothesis if you don't have a good backing of the research. If you don't have the good backing of what is existing. I was trying to give you the example of a null hypothesis where I told you that the case of life expectancy. I'm trying to bring that example again in terms of identifying the design. What happened here is, I come from a village, and one day when I go back to the village, I get details of the death of a person. And I understand that this person died at the age of 90. Immediately, I relate it to a previous death where another person died at an age of 87. Suddenly, I get a feeling that, okay, 90 and 87. Let me go to the village office and collect the age in which the last 10 deaths have taken place. And I understand that 10 is not a full sample, but just a preliminary thing. I understand that out of 10, 8 have happened around 85. This example I gave earlier. Immediately, I get a hypothesis. Why I'm getting this hypothesis? Because I know two facts clearly. Two existing theories are clear in my mind. Those theories are theories relating to the life expectancy of an Indian and the life expectancy of a Keralite. Both are not my findings. That is literature. Those are the facts which are said in the literature. And those facts says that the life is 75 for an Indian, 75, 76, and maybe for a Keralite it is 80. But now I'm finding my village to have something like 85. But this is not a fully established sample and a fully established collection that I've done. But preliminary, my thought is that people in my village live longer. Now, this could be because of various reasons. I might relate this to food and life expectancy. I might relate this to lifestyle and life expectancy. I might relate this to culture, habits, and life expectancy. Based on that, I formulate a design. Then I might have lots of secondary information in terms of life spending patterns, living standards. I might have that with me. I might also collect some primary data on a sample, which can be a probability based sampling, where I give due weightage to the variability in the population, the heterogeneity in the population, and then I use an appropriate method and collect data and I prove or disprove this. So, what is important? Grabbing your literature well, relating your research questions to the existing literature. If your literature is shallow, if your understanding of the theories is not very correct, if your understanding of the current facts is not very correct, obviously there is a chance that you will not have a hypothesis. In the example which I now quoted, if my understanding of the average life expectancy of an Indian or a Keralite is not known to me, then I have got no understanding of whether this 85 or 90 is high or low, because I do not know the national theory. So knowing the existing facts is very crucial, not only to get your research gap, but also to address the research questions. And when once that is done, now you have a very clear idea about what is going to be the research design that you're going to formulate. Are you just finding out characteristics? Are you trying to dig into something? Are you going into experimental cause effect relationship? So are you going into an evaluation where an intervention mediation is measured, where we were talking about training yesterday? And once that is decided, in tune with that, you select your method. You decide. I might go for, very widely, we go for interviews and questionnaires, but there are cases where observations, where participation, where experiencing, or where experiments can also take place. And there could be also published facts, figures, documents coming up, which gives reference to the event which you would like to find. And that findings could also bring in some implications, which we talked about in terms of content analysis. So thank you so much. Now, yeah, we have a few minutes left. So maybe in terms of certain factors which you would like to put across, we can have some sharing. So anything as we did yesterday, which you would like to clarify, which you would like to add on, feel free to do that now in terms of whatever time we have. Your questions, please. Now, yeah, please.
Sir, my doubt is like,
Yeah.
sir, do we need to stick to the research design or else can we allow to make minor changes while we are executing actually?
No, that is based on if you find that your research design is not in tune with the research questions and is not in tune with uh, the objectives that you have framed in terms of the problem or in terms of the issue that you are probing, then obviously you will have to change the design. And definitely you have scope for that. That's why we are saying, even in actually designing what is your research, the true research problem, which is getting encompassed through your title, you can take time for that. So if you don't put the design, revise the design, because a design is something where you have to think in terms of the tools and the subsequent parts. So it has to be corrected if there is, you find that it is not in tune with the questions. So obviously it should be corrected.
Sir, my question is regarding a sample bias. Suppose we are studying the problems faced by people residing near seashore.
Okay. The coastal people. Yeah.
Yes, coastal people, sir. So we are intended to collect data from the people residing near the sea.
Correct.
Suppose we are excluding the people who are not residing in the coastal area. So whether we are committing the sampling?
No, absolutely not. Here there is no sampling bias, because what do you mean by sampling bias? They are actually included in the population. 1. 2, they are included in the sampling frame also. If they are not included in the sampling frame also, even then there is no bias. But when you said that they are people who are coastal residents, Your population is only people who are in the coastal residents. So those who are not coastal residents are obviously not part of the frame. They're not a part of the population. Then if you are not including them, there's no bias. But think, if they are in the coastal region, and because maybe let us say that there is a group of people who normally sleep during daytime and go at night for fishing. And when you go for collection, they are not available. So you decide that, okay, I'm not taking the opinion of these people who sleep during daytime and go during night for fishing. Now they are part of your response. Their response is important for your answer, but you're not including them. Because you're saying that when I'm going there, they are not available. They are part of the population and they have got their opinion to respond. But because they are not accessible to your removing, now there is a sampling bias. The other one is not a sampling bias. I hope I have made myself clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, Husharani, you had a question?
Sir, excuse me. Please give few more tips for selecting research design.
Okay, the research design was what we did yesterday. The tips for research design, I already have given. You were there yesterday? Were you there? Were you present yesterday? Or
No, sir.
No,
No,
you were
sir.
not. Okay, that's why you didn't get it. Okay, I'll just, research design was one full thing which we did yesterday for 90 minutes. Again, I'm trying to, research design is actually the framework that you're using. That's why I said this is a continuum. What we did in the first class, second class, it's just continuing like that. So what is the research design? The research design is saying the framework of your research. The framework of your research is based on your research questions. That's what I was relating to. If I want to find out the impact of, say, the impact of price on the demand of a product, or if I want to find out the impact of food and health of a person, or if I want to find out the impact of what do you call intervention of training on the performance of employees. I've given 3 examples. All these have different designs. If I'm trying to take the impact of one variable on another variable, price and demand. Now in this case, I'm trying to establish cause-effect relationship. So then my research design is experimental. And my correctness is based on how I keep the intervening variables constant, under control. The demand can be influenced by factors other than price. But I'm studying relationship between price and demand, so I must keep the other variables controlled. So here I'm using experimental design. If I want to know how effective was the training, I'll try to look at the intervention impact of training. What happened at the time of training and what happened post-training. So how was the performance prior? What was the intervention and what happened subsequently? Now in that case, I'll be using it evaluation research. If I'm just trying to describe the factors, the characteristics, maybe of an industry or of a firm or maybe of a community, I'm just trying to say the features I like this, which are the known features, and I'm trying to read which among the characters is more dominant. Then I'm using a descriptive research. And if you're using a descriptive research, the known characteristics can be given as a questionnaire in the form of options. So your questionnaire is structured. Then, if I'm trying to find out something on which no existing factors and characteristics are known, I'm going to search for data for the first time and dig into deep data to understand that. Then my design is exploratory. So what is that you want to find out determines what design you are actually going to pursue. I hope I've given 3 or 4 examples here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much,
you.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other question?
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, please. You're audible. Good evening.
So, myself, Lakshmi.
Yes, please.
Sir, I have a question. If I'm studying about I'm studying about a specific, suppose ED club. ED
Good.
club and its influence on entrepreneurship intentions among the students.
Okay.
Do I need to do a pre and a post kind of search?
No,
like, I
if
need
you
to
are, yeah. Is the question over?
Yeah.
Okay. You're looking at suppose you want to study, when you said ED club, you are looking at
Yeah.
generally the characteristics of promoting efficiency through ED club, then it is
Yes.
a descriptive research. But if you are looking at, suppose there was one specific intervention from an ED club in terms of starting startups, one specific intervention, and that was there across the state, and you would like to know how many startups or how many applications for startup or how many effective startups have come as a result of that intervention alone. Now we are not studying by and large all the characteristics of the ED club, all the functions and the regular activities. You're only looking at certain specific interventions. How many students have created startup post the ED club startup intervention? Then you're doing evaluative research. Otherwise, it's a descriptive research. That means, what are you trying to look at in terms of that ED club? Generally, ED club's general functions over a period of time is not talking about a specific intervention. It's talking about the general activities. So you're doing descriptive research. You can do exploratory research there if what is intended from the ED club or what all characteristic changes should come through the ED club is not listed in advance. An ED club is giving some interventions and it can lead to something which is very exponential, which cannot be determined, then it can be exploratory. But normally, the purpose of the ED club is to get certain set characteristics in terms of changes, and what we can evaluate whether that benefits are being coming in a regular basis on an ongoing process with a continuum, not with specific interventions. Then it is descriptive. But if you look at one specific intervention, then that becomes exploratory. Sorry, that becomes evaluation research.
Okay, sir. Now means like when I doing if I'm taking that topic, do I need to go for a kind of those who are about to attend the session? Like if I'm focusing on the student, college
No,
students,
that's what I'm saying. That if your objective is to look at the change in the student as a result of that ED club intervention, if that is a research
Okay.
question for you, then you should have one part on evaluation or evaluative research design, which is looking at what happened pre-post, before they join, after they join.
Okay.
Okay.
And if while collecting data for the pre and post, do I need to prepare entirely different set of questions or the same set of
No,
questions?
it can be that is what we say cross-section design. It can be with the same person, but in that question you can say what was your level prior and what was your level post. That is one method. Another method is like in students, when they do for schools, the children, they do one assessment before that. But when you are selecting a sample which have already attended, you can't do pre. Otherwise, you should have selected once before and then again after. That is what we say longitudinal study. That can be done. But even otherwise, you can do it by asking the same person what was their level, what was their benefit, what was their assessment before it, and how it is after. So that way you can do it.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.